Hi everybody, it's Precious Pioneer and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And I moved to Barcelona. I just wanted to hop on here really quick and update you guys on the things that are going on in my life. I moved over to Barcelona for culinary school, and though I'm a military child, I don't think, and I grew up moving all over the place, I don't think that it's like similar, and I think that all of my small moves have like helped me adjust. So when I moved to college, I think it was a really great, like easy transition for me, but there's nothing that has quite like aligned with this experience quite yet, which is really exciting for me. It's been quite a while since I've like stepped outside of my comfort zone and was really forced to adjust and to learn the culture and the language of the people and just be completely amazed and in awe of just the agriculture and everything that's around me. Something so simple, like everything that I grew up knowing, I have to like abandon to kind of learn my own new footing in the culture here. And it can be as simple as like ordering a cup of coffee over here. It's a very different experience, and I know like I'm such a tourist, or I'm like really like naive when it comes to like European culture or even Spanish culture. It's just really exciting for me to kind of venture out and explore that on my own. I think that overall it's been a little bit nerve-wracking, but I want to say that 2021 is the year to kind of just abandon and let go of all fear or anything that's holding you back to accomplish your dreams and hit your goals. I have a lot of like personal growth videos on my channel. I'll leave them up here, like a card up here for you guys to check them out. But for me personally, I guess what to expect on this channel moving forward is that like I really want to push my creativity and share really good insights into my journey, whether that be kind of just sharing experiences like I am now, just talking to you guys directly, or giving you some insight into what it's like to be in culinary school over on this side of the world. But it's so funny just getting over here with my personality. Like I am very forgetful, and sometimes it can be a little bit scatterbrained or disorganized. And so I try to put systems in place that help me push forward and to help make that transition a lot easier for me. And so before I left, I just remember packing and writing everything down that I needed to get done. And to come over to Spain right now, you need a visa application, which incorporates all kinds of different documents, like a lot of paperwork, just to certify that like you have your shots and like medical records are up to date. You need a coronavirus test like 72 hours before you fly out. You need a money order, you need proof of financial means, a reason why you're going, and documents for that as well. And so I remember just like going throughout the months preparing, checking all these different things off, and I was on track. And of course there was like hiccups every now and then, like it's really hard to get a doctor right now because of coronavirus. And so I had recently just moved from Virginia to Delaware, and so finding a new doctor over there was kind of challenging because they were booked so far in advance that it was really hard to find one. And then also you have to go to the Spanish consulate to go get your visa application. And so Delaware is so small that I had to go all the way up to New York City to go to that consulate to go and get all my information done. And so there was hardly any room for error. And so it's finally like the couple of weeks before I fly out. You know, I arrived like 2 days ago, and by the time you guys see this, maybe like 3 or 4 days ago. But when a couple of days like leading up to it, or a couple of weeks, I mean, like I went and submitted my application, and they said that yeah, your visa is ready to go, just come pick it up in like a week or 2 weeks, like right before your flight, and it should be perfectly fine. Because I was scheduled to fly out on the 30th, and literally like a week passes and I get an email saying that, oh yeah, like someone on their floor had coronavirus, so the office is closed for a week. And I'm like, a week is exactly the day of my flight. Like, what am I supposed to do, you know? And they're like, oh, it should be ready by then. Just come in the office and pick it up on the day of. And I'm like, okay, sounds great. And so even though like cutting it so close is incredibly stressful for me, even for me, because I already have like a million things like to think of, and I had to get up to New York City, I have to catch a train in New Jersey and then take it all the way, like an hour all the way up into New York City, like Penn Station. And then the consulate is kind of in Midtown Manhattan, I think, Midtown area. And so I have to take an Uber or a Lyft, or I could take a subway, but I had so much luggage that it just wasn't really feasible for me. And so I had to take an Uber over there to get to the consulate, right? And so I just remember the day of my flight, I'm like rushing, gathering all these things. They confirmed that they had it, which is really great news. My mom and my sister dropped me off, and it was like a heartfelt moment. The only thing that I like missed, which was so crucial and ended up being so expensive because I didn't look at the time, is that because it was December 30th, they had holiday hours. Normally they close at like 2 o'clock, or they close at like 3 o'clock or something like that. But they closed really early when I got there, and so I showed up to the building like after traveling all this, ready to just pick up my visa and go to the airport. And I remember walking in, and I was asking the front desk guy, and I'm like, hey, like the consulate's on the 30th floor, right? And he's like, yes, but I would double check because usually they close at this time and they're not up there right now. And I'm like, oh, maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like I just remember just brushing it off because I didn't want to believe that they would actually be closed, because that is like worst case scenario, right? And so I get onto the 30th floor and literally everything is locked, and I look around and I just remember being so stunned. Like I'm like, I don't know, when I get nervous or when I'm just like overwhelmed, I'm just incredibly quiet, and I'm just like, I'm not sure what to do. So I like look through the windows, you know, to see if there's any like one last person there, because it's not like I had an appointment. You don't need an appointment. You just pick it up. It's like really simple, you know? And I just remember just like hyperventilating a little bit, because I'm like, oh my gosh, my flight is in a couple of hours. What do I do? And I started just breathing, and then I like have all my, because like at this point I like have all my luggage, and it's like all around me, like 2 suitcases, a backpack, and like all these things. And I like sit on the floor and I cry. Like I think I cried for like 4 or 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, like at that point I'm just like, okay, well, there's literally nothing I can do. It's time for me to just resort to plan B and just push through, because I think that's like the adulting part of it. Like you're always gonna have hiccups, you're always gonna have like something that kind of gets in your way, but you really just have to get through it. And I'm like, okay, so what, like everything is, my plans are like falling apart. How do I like get it together, you know? And so I know that they're open the next day, and I'm like, okay, I'll get there first thing the next day. Well, I'm stranded in New York City, so I need a place to stay for the night. And so I like looked up Airbnb really quick on my laptop and booked something, like some random thing. At that point, I just really didn't care. I just needed a place that was super cheap for one night. I needed to move my flight into the next day, because that's like the most difficult thing. And so I just remember like as I'm frantically like typing in my computer, one by one, like the people who work in the visa, like the consulate, they like leave it to the building next to me to head towards the elevator, and they look at me like my face is all puffy, I'm sure. And they look at me and they're like, ma'am, you know we're closed, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know, like, I'm sorry, I didn't look up the hours and time or something. And they're like, oh, sorry, see you tomorrow, I guess. And I'm like, oh yeah, thank you, you know. And it wasn't until like, I guess like the last guy, he sees me and he goes, what are you here for? You know, like, were you here for something? And I was like, yeah, I was here to pick up a visa. And he's like, oh, you're precious, right? Like I handled your paperwork. I was waiting for you. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't look at the hours. I'm sorry. Like, and he's like, okay, I can probably go see if I can look for it for you. And he literally tried all the doors and they were locked. And he goes, I'm sorry, there's nothing I could do. Like, I don't have keys, but I'll see you tomorrow. And I know that's tough, but you know, best of luck to you. And I'm like, thank you, I guess. Like, I was just like in shock. And at that point, I couldn't get a hold of, like, I was flying out of Delta. I couldn't get a hold of Delta because, you know, right now, especially with like flights being kind of busy, in particular, like the wait list for them is like so incredibly long. And so I remember just being on hold for a long time. And so you just add your name to the queue and you hang up. And I called an Uber. I like shuffled all my suitcases and all my luggage, and I called in another Uber, and I booked myself into a hostel, which is like, I've never been in a hostel before, and so like just being in that situation I was in shock. Like I was already like, I wasn't like traumatized because that's a little bit dramatic, but I was already like shut down. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, I messed up. What do I do? Like I was just already freaking out internally. And so to be in a situation where like, first off, when I got there was 3 flights of stairs. And I had all, like I mentioned before, I had all of my luggage. And so there was 3 really tall flights of stairs. And I don't know, I know this is a bad way of thinking, but sometimes when things just aren't going your way and more things just keep adding on top, I like feel like, oh, I deserve it, you know? And I know that's not like the right way to think, but it's just like, oh, you know, this is my fault. Like I just say that, like I'm like, I should have done this, and if I would have done this correctly, I wouldn't face all these adversities that I'm facing now. And I know that's not like the most healthy, but it's like my way of like rationalizing like, okay, well, this is just gonna be a bad day, so I just expect the worst and then it won't be as bad moving forward. And so that's kind of how I took it. I'll show you guys like what the stairs look like, but literally I was going like one step to 2, 1 step to 2, like all the way up these flights of stairs with all of my bags. And like there was this guy on the first floor and he goes, lady, like, do you need some help? Like that can't be safe. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do, thank you. And like I was just like so sad. And the guy, he like helped me bring it. He's like, I can help you bring it up halfway. And it probably took me like 20 minutes to get up these stairs. And so I'm finally shuffling in to find out that what I booked was a hostel. So it was like an apartment with small cabins, like as if like they built up the walls in between. And so there's only enough space for like a bed and a tiny little desk on the side. And there wasn't even a roof because they say it helps with like ventilation or whatever, which I'm sure is great. But oh my gosh, it was just not the time and space that I needed, because all I wanted to do was like cry, to be honest. And so the fact that you could hear like your footsteps and other conversations, I felt like I was like crying internally. I was just kind of like crying internally so my neighbors wouldn't hear. It was just like when you share a space, like you want some privacy, and like literally there's no privacy at all. So it was like the worst, because I had to call my parents, I had to call Delta, I had to call my credit card or whatever to make sure that, you know, my insurance covers all of this. And it was just a hot mess. I had to call my sister. Like it was just like not a great situation to be in. And so I ended up like not sleeping that well because of the fact that you could hear everybody. Like I was just so anxious of like wanting to move everything. And when I finally got a hold of Delta, they told me it was like $400 to $500 to move my flight. Long story short, I suppose, I went ahead the next day. It went seamlessly. You know, I did grab dinner at the hostel and I left, and it was very clean. It was nice enough, you know, and I had dinner by myself and just calmed down. I had some pasta or something that night. And then I went ahead and went to JFK in New York. And I was there for a while, I remember, just for a very long time. And then, I don't know, it's funny because like all of these experiences that I hear about but have never like fully experienced for myself, it's just so intriguing and interesting to me, because like I never quite understood what jet lag was. Like I kind of understood it because I used to fly from Florida to California all the time. Well, not all the time, but a couple of times like every other year or so to visit family. And so I kind of understand that. But to move from New York City to Paris, I just didn't understand. Like it's just simple things I don't understand until I really know. And one of it is because your ticket, it said like my flight left at 6:45 in the evening and that I arrive at 8 a.m. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that's such a long flight. I'm so stressed, and I get a little bit anxious when it comes to heights. I just thought, oh my gosh, that's such a long flight. How am I gonna be on a plane for over 12 hours? Like that's ridiculous, you know? And then it didn't hit me until I arrived in Paris, and I'm like, wow, that was so short. I was watching movies, you know, because I couldn't really sleep. And so at this point, there was like 2 nights where I really couldn't sleep. And just remember thinking like, how am I going to like last this long? But then when I arrived, it's funny because really how it worked was, for you guys, you probably know, but for me, it was like a revelation. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like, I left at 6:45, but when it really hit like midnight, like we landed. And that's why I was just like, wait, I don't get it. But it's because the time difference, the time kind of just shifted and jumped ahead. And so I didn't really have to fly this extra 8 hours, which is really nice in my mind, you know? And I just remember the Parisian airport is so interesting. Like, it's, first off, they like have you go through TSA twice, which is like a lot. So I went through the American one, and then I had to go through the Paris one, and then to stamp your passport you have to kind of go through another line again. But the thing is that they only give you like a 45-minute layover, so I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna get through TSA and have them check all my stuff and do all of this? So I'm like running across the airport, and so was like other passengers who were going on the same flight as me. But it was just so interesting because I went through American TSA no problem. Granted, I think the lady wasn't really paying attention because she was very chatty. But when I went through the Paris one, he's like, oh, you have all these liquids in your bag. And I'm like, no, I don't. I just went through like TSA already. Like, I know I don't have anything. And he goes, yeah, you do. I'm gonna need you to open all your bags. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I started to water because like I didn't, like I'm not gonna say that I cry easily, but like I was just so stressed that I wouldn't make my next flight in time after already missing a flight and then having them check my bag. Like I had to like jump on it to kind of like get it to close. And so the fact that I had to open it just randomly like that, I was just like, oh my gosh, like if I can't close my bag, it's just gonna be awful. And he ended up finding, like, I had a face wash that was like maybe this big and it was in a glass bottle, and he goes, oh yeah, we can't do glass here. And I'm like, oh, okay, except for that face wash was like $40. But I ended up going through Paris and it was fine. At this point I'm very sleep deprived, and I go ahead and fly towards Barcelona, and honestly it has to be one of the most beautiful flights that I've ever had, because since it was 8 in the morning we were catching the sunrise, and I don't think I've ever really caught a sunrise like that in an airplane. And so just seeing that over the water, it just reminds me of all those travel commercials, you know, like you're like looking down and you see the sunrise on the water and the beach, and I'm just like, wow, this is like where I'm gonna be living. That is insane. And I don't know, it was just like this beautiful moment of like peace, because I think sometimes I get so stressed over like all of these different things. Like I want everything to go off seamlessly, and I know that's not the most practical, and I think it just left me with a bunch of optimism going into this year that, you know, whatever that I want to do, I can do it. And I don't know, being here has made me really, really happy so far, and everybody's really friendly. Granted, it's only been 2 days. I'm sure I'll find like the highs and the lows, but right now I'm just absorbing it, you know, like sinking it all in. And I wanted to share that with you guys. Today I'm going apartment hunting, and so I kind of just woke up. I still have my cup of coffee and my toast, but wish me luck. I'll definitely show you guys which apartment I choose. Well, obviously which apartment I choose, but like the different options and my adventures today. But I really hope that you guys enjoy this chat with me. Let me know what you guys think, if you've ever been to Barcelona or have traveled anywhere this year or looking forward to travels in 2021. What are your goals or your resolutions? You can comment what you hope to see from me in this channel, or different things you want me to explore and capture for you guys. But I appreciate you, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.